Imagine dropping your newborn into a janitor's arms at a gas station like it's a misplaced briefcase. Then 5 years later, the janitor pulls up to Chicago's most expensive private school in a BMW, and the child you abandoned sprints across the lot screaming, "Daddy, like the universe just ran a perfect replay on your worst decision." Vivian Blackwood almost fumbled the keys to her Porsche when she saw it. Little Nathan, 5 years old, in a crisp Wellington Academy uniform, leather backpack bouncing on his shoulders, barreling toward a black man in a janitor's work clothes, standing calmly beside a glossy BMW, as if he belonged there the way gravity belongs to the ground. "Daddy, Daddy," the boy shouted again. Voice bright, fearless, certain like a signal that doesn't care who's listening, only that it has a target. Vivian's pulse jumped so hard she felt it in her throat because there was no way this could be the same baby she had abandoned on a rainy December night at a lonely gas station outside the city, the night she had turned a human life into a problem to be deleted. 5 years ago, the sky had been a sheet of cold rain, neon lights flickering off wet asphalt. She remembered it too clearly, the car idling the gas station, humming her hands, shaking as if her body knew she was about to commit an act. Her mind would try to rewrite later. Thomas Williams, 28 then, had been standing under the awning in a thin jacket holding a mop bucket from his night shift at Blackwood Industries, because he'd just gotten off work and stopped to grab coffee before heading home to check on his mother. He'd been invisible in that building the way service workers are invisible to people who move through life insulated by wealth, until that one late night months earlier when Vivian had stayed in her office crying. After a brutal argument with her fiancé, mascara-streaking pride shattered, and Thomas, quiet, respectful, exhausted, had offered a tissue and a few kind words without asking for anything. Exceptions become catastrophic failures when nobody respects boundaries. And 9 months later, there was a baby Vivian's family could never know about. Not in their world, not with their last name, not with their brand image charity galas and their legacy. In her panic, she did what too many powerful people do when confronted with consequences. She tried to offload them onto someone she assumed couldn't fight back. "Take him," she had said, pushing the bundled infant into Thomas's stunned chest. "I can't do this. My family can't know I had a child with—" She couldn't even finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The insult was built into the silence. Then she climbed into her car and drove away, taillights bleeding into the rain, leaving Thomas standing there with a baby he barely knew, water soaking through his clothes, the child's tiny cry cutting through the night like an alarm that wouldn't stop. Thomas had been a janitor at her family's company for 3 years, working nights to cover chemo copays and rent for his mother, who was sick and declining. And in Vivian's mind, that job title was the sum total of the man. She never asked what he knew, what he'd studied, what he'd sacrificed, what he was capable of. She saw a uniform and assumed the person inside it existed to absorb messes physical, emotional, moral. That's why what she saw now in the school parking lot didn't compute. Thomas lifted Nathan into the air as the boy giggled, and Vivian watched, stunned, as Thomas laughed, really laughed, in a way she had never seen in the quiet man who used to clean her office after hours. Thomas looked different too. Same face, same steady eyes, but his posture held confidence, not deference. There was a watch on his wrist that didn't look like a cheap gift. He greeted other parents with a nod that said he belonged among them. Nathan waved a paper excitedly. "Dad, did you see? I got an A+ on my math test." Thomas glanced at the engineer reviewing a clean schematic. "I knew you could do it, champ. We'll celebrate at home. Grandma made that chocolate cake you love." Grandma. Vivian felt something tighten in her chest because the last thing she remembered was Thomas living with his mother in a cramped apartment, counting dollars. How was he talking about cake and tuition and home-like stability was normal? How was Nathan at Wellington Academy, the same elite school Vivian attended, where tuition was $35,000 a year, and the parents wore wealth the way some people wear perfume? And the BMW, why was a janitor driving a BMW and waiting for pickup? Like the parking lot wasn't even slightly intimidating? Vivian ducked behind a column, hiding like she was the one with something to be ashamed of. And Thomas, without turning, fully paused and looked directly toward her hiding spot. Their eyes met for a heartbeat, and what she saw in his expression made her stomach drop. It wasn't surprise. It wasn't fear.
It was recognition.
It was the calm look of someone who had been expecting a certain variable to re-enter the system, someone who'd built safeguards, logging, and redundancies for this exact moment. That night, Vivian couldn't sleep. The image looped in her head like a stubborn error message you can't clear. Nathan's joyful daddy, Thomas's calm confidence, the BMW, the A+, the word home. It didn't match her mental model, the one where Thomas stayed broken and grateful, where she could someday return with a check and a speech and be forgiven without accountability. 3 days later, she did what powerful people do when reality offends them. She hired someone to dig for dirt. She said, where he lives, how he lives, where the money comes from. Everything. A week later, Marcus returned with a report that made Vivian's world tilt. Thomas Williams, 33, he began, flipping pages. He hasn't worked as a janitor for 3 years. He owns TW Solutions, a digital security consulting firm. 8 million revenue. Vivian's mouth went dry. That's impossible. Marcus kept going like a man reading facts that don't care about her denial. He lives in Lincoln Park. House is valued around $850. He has a BMW. Savings account around $400,000. College fund for Nathan at $180. Vivian felt heat rise in her face. He was a janitor, he was Marcus said, and he also has a computer science degree from Northwestern. He worked night shifts to support his mother during cancer treatment. She passed 2 years ago. Small inheritance became his seed capital. He built the company. Legitimately, the pieces clicked into place with a sick kind of clarity. Thomas had never been just anything. He'd been smart, educated, strategic, running a long game, while Vivian assumed uniforms equal limits. Marcus hesitated, then added, there's more. He tried to contact you repeatedly in the first 2 years after you left. Letters, phone calls, attempts through your company. He wanted to formalize custody, child support, responsibilities. Vivian's stomach clenched. I never got anything. Marcus' eyes held a professional kind of judgment. Your secretary intercepted them because you instructed staff to block inconveniences from your personal life. And when he persisted, your lawyers sent a cease and desist threatening harassment action. The memory hit her like a punch. She had given those instructions in a cold panic, then buried them under social events and business meetings, and the comforting lie that if you don't look at something, it isn't real. He raised Nathan alone. Marcus continued. Neighbors say he was walking the street at 3 a.m. with a crying baby. He worked multiple jobs, studied at night, built his skills, took care of the child. Nathan is well cared for. Happy Vivian felt a flash of guilt, real guilt, then crushed it under something uglier. Resentment. Thomas wasn't supposed to win. Not in her head. In her head, he was supposed to be stuck. Find something illegal, she snapped. No one goes from janitor to millionaire in 3 years without getting dirty. Marcus didn't flinch, but his voice was firm. Miss Blackwood, there's no evidence of illegal activity. His clients are bank, hospitals, law firms. Everything is documented. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Then investigate the school scholarships. Forged documents.
Something.
I want leverage. What Vivian didn't understand, what she couldn't understand, because she'd never had to think like someone who builds systems to survive, was that Thomas had already turned his life into a fortress. When you do digital security for a living, you don't just protect companies from threats. You learn to predict behavior, track signals, and document patterns before they become disasters. Thomas had set alerts for his name, his company, his address, and yes, Nathan's name too. The moment Vivian hired Marcus and searches started touching Thomas's data footprint, Thomas's monitoring system lit up. Not in a paranoid way, in a professional way, like intrusion detection doing its job. He brought the tablet to his wife, Diana, at their kitchen table while she helped Nathan with homework. Diana wasn't just his wife, she was a pediatrician, brilliant, grounded, and the woman Nathan had been calling mom for 2 years. When Nathan ran upstairs to brush his teeth, Thomas showed Diana the alerts. Vivian's investigating us. Diana's expression hardened because she recognized the old pattern instantly, the disbelief some people have when they see a black man thriving without permission. She can't accept your success as real, Diana said. She's looking for a story where you cheated so she can feel superior. Thomas nodded. Then he pulled out a thick folder, a dossier he'd built during the first 2 years after the abandonment. Copies of registered mail receipts returned, unopened envelopes, call log printouts, even notes from conversations with secretaries who admitted they'd been ordered to block him. I tried, Thomas said quietly. I tried to do this the right way. Child support, supervised visitation, anything. Diana flipped through and felt her throat tighten. She abandoned him completely, she whispered. Nathan came down in pajamas and wrapped his arms around Diana. Mommy, can you read me a story? Diana hugged him fiercely, and the truth landed like a physical weight. To Nathan, Vivian wasn't mom. Diana was. Not by DNA, but by presence nightmares, fevers, school projects, hugs, discipline, pride. After Nathan fell asleep, Thomas showed Diana something else: public records, magazine articles, social pages. Vivian's last 5 years mapped out like a timeline. Failed relationships, social reputation management, a pattern of choosing men who didn't want baggage, men who'd bolt the moment a hidden child became visible. She doesn't want Nathan to love him, Diana said after reading. She wants control. She wants to prove she can pull him back whenever she wants. Thomas closed the laptop. If she tries to take him, he asked quietly, are you ready for a fight? Diana didn't hesitate. Thomas, that boy is my son. If she wants to disrupt his life, she'll learn she underestimated both of us. Meanwhile, Vivian escalated, exactly as Thomas predicted. She didn't call Thomas to talk. She didn't ask to meet Nathan with a counselor. She didn't offer apologies or accountability. 2 weeks later, she filed for joint custody, claiming she'd been emotionally coerced into leaving her baby and was now ready to be a mother. It was a legal strategy dressed as a redemption story. Thomas's attorney, Patricia Wong, reviewed the evidence and smiled the way a seasoned engineer smiles when a lab test confirms the design will hold under stress. In 20 years, she said, I've never seen abandonment documented this cleanly. Vivian hired an expensive firm and lied to them with confidence, spinning herself as a vulnerable young woman manipulated by a janitor. She assumed the title janitor would do half the persuasion for her, and Patricia walked into the room with boxes meticulously labeled, time-stamped, indexed like a full incident report for 5 years of neglect. Letter sent January 15th, 2020, Patricia read aloud. Requesting a meeting to discuss child support and custody. Returned unopened. She read another. The list didn't stop. The longer it went, the paler Vivian became, because she realized what she'd forgotten. Thomas didn't just raise a child. He logged everything. Then Patricia played audio Vivian's own voice from recorded conversations about investigating Thomas's life. Her obsession with finding something she could use. Her refusal to accept his success could be earned. The judge's face tightened. Ms. Blackwood, he asked, voice steady but sharp, why were you hiring investigators and searching for leverage instead of contacting the father directly to discuss custody? Vivian's lawyer shifted uncomfortably, realizing his client had sold him a fantasy. And when the court learned Vivian had exposed Nathan's personal information during a reckless relationship risking identity theft, the last thread snapped. The judge denied her petition permanently. No custody, no visitation, no contact. The ruling wasn't revenge, it was risk management for a child's well-being. Outside the courthouse, Vivian's carefully built social image imploded. Her family, wealthy, conservative, obsessed with appearances, was humiliated publicly. Her boyfriend vanished. Ran the story not as romance, but as consequence. A mother who treated a child like a secret asset discovered the father she underestimated, built a life too stable to be hijacked. And back home, Nathan waited with a drawing of his family, Dad, Mom Diana, and him smiling under a bright sun. No gas station, no rain, no abandonment. Because Thomas's real revenge was never about destroying Vivian. It was about making her irrelevant to Nathan's happiness by building something so solid it didn't need her. Years later, when Nathan asked, "Do I miss my biological mom?" Thomas hugged him and answered with the truth that hits harder than any courtroom speech. Family isn't who gave you DNA, champ. It's who chooses to stay when things get tough. And if you've ever watched a system fail because someone tried to skip responsibility instead of designing for reality, you already know the ending was never going to favor the person who ran away. It was always going to favor the one who stayed, built, documented, and protected what mattered.